Hey guys, thank you very much for tuning in to watch my video today. I wanted to discuss a topic which I've not really talked about on this channel before, and today, rather than talking about gymnastics training techniques, I'm going to be talking more about coaching and teaching gymnastics. So I myself am definitely not a perfect coach, and I'm at no point in this video am I going to claim that I am, but I am a British Gymnastics Level 2 qualified coach in both gymnastics and trampolining. I've been coaching gymnastics or trampolining at some level for over 10 years now, and since I graduated university in 2014, coaching has been my full-time job. So although again I'm definitely not a perfect coach, I do have quite a lot of experience to draw from when we're talking about this topic. I'm still learning and developing a lot about coaching every single day, every time I step into the gym, but I want to use this video as a chance to kind of share with you guys some of my top tips for effective coaching, which I've developed from my own experiences and my own mistakes over the past decade or so. And I really hope that if you are either a current coach or somebody who's looking to go into coaching, that some of these tips resonate with you and can give you something to think about to help improve your own coaching performance. And hopefully some of these tips can also be applied to coaching other sports and teaching almost anything. So my first golden rule for efficient coaching practice is to coach the cause and not the effect. And I see this quite a lot when coaches are giving verbal feedback to a gymnast. They will comment on what happened rather than why it happened. So if that doesn't make sense, let's take a look at an example. For example, you're coaching a gymnast doing a front somersault on the floor, and their front somersault, they take off leaning forwards with their chest down, which results in the somersault being low. Now, although technically correct, you need to go higher is bad coaching advice, because it doesn't demonstrate to the gymnast how they can actually achieve that. There's nothing actionable in that feedback. So a much better piece of verbal feedback would be make sure that you stand up straight on the takeoff, because that will give the gymnast something specific to focus on. Coach the cause and not the effect. My second piece of advice would be to switch up the way in which you give your feedback, particularly using visual and kinesthetic feedback. So I've definitely been guilty of this in the past. Sometimes as coaches we get a little bit lazy and we tend to overuse verbal feedback. Verbal feedback is great. There is a time and a place for verbal feedback, absolutely. But I think if you say the same thing over and over again to a gymnast and it's not getting through, then in order to break their habits and change what they're doing and improve their performance, we need to try and tackle the problem in another way. A lot of studies have shown that if you can give feedback verbally but also visually or kinesthetically at the same time, that's more effectively than just doing one or the other. So it's useful to, maybe film the gymnast's attempt and then talk through what could have been better, or let them watch a demonstration, either a video that you've got of somebody doing it well, or a live demonstration from a more experienced gymnast in the gym, talk through the key points. Or you can use this kinesthetic feedback, which is kind of letting the gymnast feel specifically the actions and the movements and the muscle contractions which they should be going through in order to produce the correct movement. So the kinesthetic feedback's perhaps a little more difficult to understand. It's a slightly more advanced concept / coaching technique, but it's a really, really powerful one. I've used it quite a lot over the last couple of years with great success a lot of the time. So again, let's put it into context, use a little bit of an example. Let's say, for example, you're coaching somebody to do a handspring vault and they keep going over the vault piked. Okay? By saying drive your heels, you might eventually get them to straighten their body out and drive their heels and get that tight arch shape off the springboard. But what can sometimes be an even more effective way of doing it is by letting the gymnast feel and understand what muscles need to be contracted to produce that movement. So in this particular scenario, what I might do is I might lie the gymnast down on their front on the floor and ask them to lift their feet off the floor but without bending their legs. I'll then ask them to focus on specifically what they're having to do in order to produce that movement. Hopefully they'll recognise that they're squeezing the glutes and the muscles in the lower back. Then I'll kind of push their feet down towards the floor, so they've got to work even harder to hold that tight arch position and hold their feet off the floor. So this kind of teaches them the correct shape and what they have to do to make that shape. Hopefully they should be able to transfer those contractions and that movement across to the skill. My third piece of advice would be to prioritise and limit your coaching feedback. So particularly if you're working with a very inexperienced gymnast, or if you're working on a gymnast who's learning a new skill for the first time, when they take an attempt at that move, chances are there's going to be quite a lot of things which they could have done to improve it, to make it perfect. However, it's kind of confusing, boring, and a little bit demotivating to list every single thing which could have been done better after every single attempt. What tends to work better is by thinking through all the things that could have been done better, picking out which one is the most important, and focusing on that one to start with. Once you fix that one, you'll then move on to the next one, until gradually you're just working on the finer details and you're perfecting the skill. But it's pointless somebody borderline landing on their head and then asking them to point their toes when they go over. Yeah, let's pick the most important bits to work on first and work on the fine details later on. Particularly when you're working with younger gymnasts as well, they have a very short attention span, and if you lecture and go on for hours and hours and hours, chances are they're gonna zone out and they're gonna miss the most important points. So particularly when you're working with younger gymnasts, challenge yourself to put across as much information as possible in as few words as possible. I definitely wouldn't question them too much. I definitely wouldn't say sentences and sentences, just a few words, what needs to be done better next time. Obviously when you're working with older kids or with adults, you can spend a little bit more time with your verbal feedback because sometimes things do need a bit more explanation. But even when I'm working with older gymnasts, I will always try to give one, sometimes two pieces of feedback at a time. I would never just list hundreds and hundreds of things, because then the gymnast isn't going to be able to focus on doing all of them at once. My fourth piece of advice would be to plan and evaluate your sessions. Now, I've only started doing this properly fairly recently, which I do regret because it's actually helping a huge amount. But quite a lot of coaches will kind of turn up to the gym and then just kind of run the session as they go along, just kind of making it up on their toes, which, you know, it tends to work okay, but you can often A, save a lot of time, and B, be working on the correct things, more effective work, if you plan what you're going to do in advance. So my advice would be to, before you arrive in the gym, know as much information as possible. How many gymnasts are you going to be working with? What age and ability are these gymnasts? What events are you going to be on? How much time have you got? How much space have you got? By knowing this, you can properly plan what skills and drills you're going to be doing, rather than getting into the gym and then worrying about it and ending up with less time to actually do it. As well as planning what to do beforehand, jotting down a few notes about what you did and how the session went afterwards can also be really useful. I have a little notebook here. I write just a paragraph also at the end of every session, which I can then refer back to when I'm with that group for the next time. Be like, okay, I remember we did that this time. What can we now do to progress from that? So sometimes you'll forget what you did last time if you don't note it down, and that can make your sessions repetitive, or it can mean that they're kind of not linked and they're not progressive. So by knowing exactly what you did last time, you can kind of get a really good idea of what you need to do this time to make sure that your sessions are engaging and building the gymnast's ability at the same time. So we move on now to my fifth and final major piece of advice for coaching, which is try to make your sessions as fun as possible and build a good rapport with the group. Now this one's a little bit more personal to me because it reflects kind of my coaching philosophy, but hopefully some of you guys will kind of agree with it as well. So I love performance gymnastics, and I love working with the higher level gymnasts on more complicated skills, like I'm sure a lot of coaches do. That is a passion of mine. It's good fun to work with the higher level athletes. But the lower level gymnasts and the recreational sessions that we're involved in are just as important. You know, through running these sessions, we have the ability to promote healthy exercise habits and healthy lifestyle habits amongst every kid and every adult that we work with. And I think in a society that's becoming gradually more and more sedentary and obese, getting the chance to get so many people involved with exercise just feels like a really good public health service, and I'm really proud of the fact that I can promote exercise and fun to so many different kids and adults around the local area. If you can teach a gymnast, a kid, an adult, whatever, to enjoy gymnastics or enjoy any sport, then staying healthy and staying active is going to be extremely easy for that person. Now obviously if your gymnasts don't enjoy your sessions, the chances of them dropping out and doing less exercise are quite high. So I think it's quite important to try and get on well with the kids, try to make sure the sessions are fun and engaging. According to a British Gymnastics survey on dropout, one of the main reasons why kids drop out of gymnastics is either because the sessions are repetitive and boring, or because they didn't get on well with or they didn't like the coach. So obviously not everybody can please everyone, and there are other reasons why people move on from gymnastics, but by making sure the sessions are fun and trying our best to get on with the gymnasts, we can do an awful lot to promote people staying in the sport. I think it's healthy to remember when we're coaching that, particularly when we're working with kids, that they are kids and we can't necessarily expect them to act like soldiers the entire time, and B, 99.9% of them are never going to compete internationally or at the Olympics. So as much as we want to push them to progress and perform, it's not all that serious, you know. The main objective for me, even for squad gymnastics, is to make sure that they enjoy themselves, because otherwise they're not going to stick around. I try not to ever really lose my temper with a gymnast unless they are either putting themselves or somebody else in danger, if they are putting in a low amount of effort and they're not really making any progression, or if they are distracting somebody else from working properly or making improvements. I will try to never lose my temper at a gymnast if they are trying their best, even if they're not necessarily progressing. So yeah, that's essentially my thoughts on effective coaching, guys. I hope that you found at least some of this advice useful and interesting. Please feel free to leave me any comments or questions down below. Thank you very much.